Okay.
Just let me know when I can start. Now?
Okay, so I'm just going to briefly present you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we're going to continue with the last talk of today, and tomorrow and Friday we will also continue with the workshop. So Joan Sebastian Mejia Randon is completing his doctorate at the Institute of Humanities of the National University of Cordoba, and he has worked on the philosophy of science and the philosophy of technology related to tool use and tool manufacturing in non-human animals. So thank you, Sam. Thank you very much for being here. And he's presenting a work with Santiago Arango Muñoz, who is an associate professor at Universidad de Antioquia in Colombia.
Thank you.
And he has worked on metacognition and memory and the philosophy of psychology. So thank you very much, Sebastian.
Yeah, amazing. So, first of all, thank you, Alejandro, for the invitation, and thank you all for being here. And yeah, I'm Sebastian, and I'm a PhD student, and I work on the direction of Mariela Aguilera and Santiago Arango, my supervisor. And Santiago is not here today, so I hope don't disappointing you. And all the stupid things that I say today is my mistake, not the mistake of Santiago. But I hope that everything will be okay. So today's topic is metacognitive feeling as mental affordances, and I want to introduce this topic with the following consideration. And let's consider about the main features about our cognitive life. Uh, Usually, when we are thinking, our thinking is uh, conscious. It's mean that we are aware that we're thinking, and also our thinking refers something that is the many philosophers consider as intentional, or in a technical sense, it's about something, aboutness. And what psychologists recently pointing out is the influence of the feelings and emotion that shapes the way that we perceive and take decision, and also in many fields on our cognitive life. So it's not a crazy idea to consider that the feelings motivate the people's thinking, but specifically there is a kind of feelings that Santiago and I we are interested on is in metacognitive feelings. Metacognitive feelings are related with our monitoring task, and there is many classification about this kind of feelings. So the feeling of confidence, the feeling of knowing, the feeling of rationality, reorientation, and so on is related to our cognitive activity. So in that sense, we can say that the feeling of curiosity motivate inquire, but contrary, the feeling of certainty frees the inquiry. So here's my central question. What what we try to answer today is how metacognitive feeling contribute to the regulation of action, but specifically we are interested the most in the mental action. So what we try to claim today is the following thesis. Metacognitive feelings are affordances because they are important in the production and regulation of mental action. So, feeling as did of thumb phenomena, feeling of knowing, feeling of error, among other, could be considered as mental affordances. So, our strategy is very simple, I think. Just two main steps. Firstly, we will analyze the mental affordances hypothesis by Tom McClelland that I will explain a little bit later. And we criticize the notion of external stimuli, and we will propose a friendly expansion. What's that mean? That we are not reject all the McClelland thesis. We are just propose a way to understand some critics that many authors made to McClelland paper, the paper of 2020. So in the second step, yeah, in the second step, we will introduce a metacognitive framework divided into three stages: self-prediction, intermediate monitoring, final evaluation, and that I will develop in the third part of this talk. Uh, Finally, we'll apply this framework to analyze a specific case of mental action, that is reasoning. In our original paper, we applied these same stages to memory and also to paying attention, but because the time just consider the reasoning process. So uh, this is the roadmap of my talk. In the first play, I will introduce and show a little bit the mental affordance hypothesis. Later, I will consider some critics to the hypothesis. Later, I will explain our thesis and arguments. And finally, I just put some brief conclusion, and I hope that you enjoy this talk. So, uh, I think that it's important to have a common background about the notion that I will use here in this talk. And this is a kind of a key concept. Firstly, when I talk about metacognition, I'm just it could be defined as thinking about our own thinking. And when we monitoring our cognitive states, according to the psychology, we have a specific output that is cognitive feelings that are a felt well to a felt experience that inform about our cognitive states. And this felt experience, metacognitive experience, has a specific qualia or specific will to be felt. And in that sense, I refer to phenomenology. I'm not thinking in the Husserlian tradition, but we are thinking here in phenomenology in the way as philosophy of mind understand phenomenology. It's mean in a purely cognitive character. So also I think that it's good to put the cards on the table. I mean, to clarify the theoretical commitment of this talk. And this is not a disclaimer about the previous talk, but we we are agree with a representational view of affordances, according to which to perceive affordances imply that the individual perform internal processes to interpret this stimuli from the environment. Also, we are agree with a mental agency causalism that is contrary to the mental ballistic nature of the mind proposed previously by Strawson. Uh, we consider that the most of the time we perform mental action. We can control our belief, our imagination, and so on. And this mental action uh, do not necessarily imply a physical movement. For example, our inner speech, abstract contemplation, and mathematical reasoning is a case of this mental action. So let's jump to the
Oh,
first
sorry.
play, and I will.
Sorry, Sebastian. Quick question. What does the ballistic view is? What is the ballistic view?
Ballistic view is the Strawson position. So we are agree with, for example, Wu conception about over action. That's mental action.
But what does ballistic mean? That everything has to be overt?
Oh, I think that the question maybe is in the end, or
Yes, yes, yes. It was just I don't know the meaning of the term ballistic
no,
in.
ballistic is just the the belief just appearing to into your mind,
Oh, okay. Thank you very
and
much.
it's not voluntary. I mean, it's
Thank you.
oh, yeah. So okay, about um, the first uh, the first moment of this talk is mental affordance hypothesis, and as you see in this workshop, there is many uses of the word affordances. Maybe there is an expansion, maybe we can see some application, but the thing is, when we try to define what affordance is so complex, is because, according to some authors, it is the application of the term affordances. For example, in neuroscience, try to understand the physical substrate of the affordances, but in other discussion that is related to my research investigation in philosophy of technology, people use affordances to explain the technical behavior, to explain, for example, how chimpanzees use some tools, and it's may very complex to define the affordances. So I think that all this definition share is the idea that we directly perceive the opportunity of action offered by environment. And this notion make us return to Gibson theory. Uh, I'm not an expert in Gibson theory, neither in the ecological psychology, but there is some key points to understand this affordances theory. The first is the idea of the perception is not a process that involves a mental representation. It's mean that the perception has a specific interaction with the environment. It's mean, according to Gibson theory, the perception is um, the only ability that receive information, not through the feelings or emotion. So this is the background. There is a anti-representational point of view that doesn't distinguish between subjective and objective. And this is because when we perceive the environment, we perceive the opportunity for action in relation with the environment. So I think that this is contrary to the classic conception of theory of action. I have in mind the Pittsburgh School, McDowell, and others that try to explain the action with mental representation, an idea that we have in our mind, and later this is the causal antecedent of this action. So the main concept of the affordances theory, um, as far I understand, is the idea of direct perception that Manuel Eras Escribano put very well, because when we perceive the world, what we perceive is the ecological information that we detect directly through the perception of the opportunities. And here is important to notice that it's opportunity for bodily action that is related to the environment. And in that sense, it's important to distinguish between bodily affordances and contrary mental affordances. So, as uh, as you know, maybe in the previous presentation, there is many reference to Manuel Eras Escribano and McClellan and others that try to take the Gibson notion to understand mental action, perception, and etc. And this is important because I think that nowadays Gibson framework have many um, is in vogue. I mean, that many people, many philosophers have returned to Gibson to explain some philosophical problems. And in that sense, maybe there is some notion that the people say, okay, mental affordances, but for real, maybe we have a risk of trivializate the notion of affordances. And maybe the main critics that some authors say, for example, Segundo Ortiz and Eres Escribano, is that we until now we don't explain how it's possible to perceive these cognitive affordances, or we don't have a proper justification for these mental acts. I think that at the end, what we need is a theory of how can we perceive cognitive affordances. And for that reason, we are here try to understand this notion. And for me, uh, also it's important to have other common background, that is the representational point of view, that maybe shed some light about this problem. Uh, so let's put let's try to put all the point of view in the table. Sorry if I forget someone, but this is my own reconstruction about the problem. Uh, by one hand, we have the ecological view that is more close to Gibson, that considered bodily affordances, that we perceive the world, object in the world, for example, a chair, and we consider as jumpable. Sorry for the abuse of English. But contrary, we have the representational point of view that consider a chess game as winnable. And here is, I can put McLennan and Jorba and say that isn't necessary to consider also mental action. And what we try to introduce, maybe, and also Joel Proust is in this line, metacognitive feelings as mental affordances. And I think that is not, this is compatible, the representational view and this metacognitive view, according to which we feel an error that afford the revision of our cognitive task. So with this background, I can introduce the hypothesis that I will discuss today is the mental affordance hypothesis proposed by McClellan in 2020. And this hypothesis claimed that the perception of external stimuli are affordances to perform certain mental actions, such as attending, imagining, or calculating. And McClellan proposed two requirements to that something could be a case of mental action. So something afford a mental action if only if uh, X offer an opportunity to S to perform the terminal mental action. In that sense, the sensitivity is crucial here because we perceive in a phenomenological way the affordances. And automatically, this is the other requirement, we prepare in an automatical way, there is a preparation of the motor patterns to carry on determinate action. More clearly, Tom McClellan proposed three candidates for mental affordances. The first case is the affordant attention, and McClellan gave us an example of consider when there is a ring warning light that spontaneous, attach our attention. According to McClellan, this warning light represent an affordances for mentally act to focally attending. Also, McClellan considered that a jar of marble afford the mental action of counting them. And finally, McClellan considered hypothetical scenario when we went to the river, suppose, and we try to step in some stone, and suddenly there is no more stone, or maybe there is a tricky stone. So McClellan, in that scenario, considered that the tricky stone afford mental action that imagine possible routes. So I think that the com the that is important to notice here is the idea of mirroring. Mirroring, as far I understand in McClellan consideration, is that there is a connection between bodily affordances and mental affordances. It's mean that if we perceive affordance for bodily action, we should also recognize the affordance for mental action. But here is our problem. What happens when there is no outside object that perform or make us to perform this mental action? Also, McClellan considered that a scenario. He said that the opportunity to perform abstract mental act detached from bodily are too complex to be perceived. So here is our specific question that Santiago and I try to solve in this working paper process. So how do we characterize affordances that do not depend on external stimuli? In other sense, how we consider the um, mental action as paying attention, imagine without alarms, book, and etc. So if it's any possibility to consider that, what implication do they have for the notion of mental agency? And that's exactly what we try to answer in this talk. So I will move into the second part of my talk, and I will just put some critics from McClellan position. So maybe here is the Mac critic to McClellan. It's a bad joke, sorry. And I just put some of them, not like specific or accurate, just general critics. And I already mentioned that is the Segundo Ortiz Anera Escribano critique that McClellan doesn't offer an explanation for how mental affordances can be perceived. And if I read well this paper, McClellan, it is not completely in the cognitive paradigm, neither in the ecological one. So they conclude that mental affordances is ungrounded. And other critics, also from an activist point of view, is a critic directly to the notion of mental action. That is from Brunenberg and van der Herik. And they say that the distinction between overt and covert acts that McClellan take from Metzinger note Messenger conceptualization doesn't support the distinction between bodily and mental action that McClellan made. And the case that Bruningberan and the other propose is consider the microsaccades when we are paying attention. When we try to put attention and our eyes is like move a little bit, it's involved body. And this is contrary to the McClellan notion. So I don't, for me, this is difficult to answer. And this is not the person who I discussing in my talk. My discussion is directly with McClellan, or not the discussion, I mean, just the expansion that I try to make is with McClellan framework. And I think that the most interesting critics is the Joel Proust made it about the critique of external stimuli. Um, According to Joel Proust, uh, he said that maybe the notion of this outside object is just a instrumental precondition that motivate or afford us to imagination. But the thing is that we have to explain is the causal role, because according to Joel Proust, the causal role needs to be explaining and not just simple take it for granted. So we consider that maybe metacognitive feelings could shed light on this objection. I'm not sure if it's successful, but let's try this explanation. So about the idea of mental affordances that doesn't require of the external stimuli is not new. Santi and I doesn't create this problem. Also, is a problem that McClellan considered in that paper, uh, because McClellan considered the possibility to have internal mental affordances that doesn't require this outside object. So he said that maybe we can be sensitive to such affordances in a manner that's relevantly similar to our sensitive to bodily affordances. But the problem is that McLennan didn't explore this this um, uh, this idea, because he considered that we cannot perceive our inner states, and he postulated a quasi perceptual awareness of mental affordances that is relevant similar. He just put in a footnote in his paper, and he said that maybe they will be exploring the future. And we consider that the future is now. Maybe we have some ideas that can explore this open avenue that McClellan left in that paper. So now I will like Santi and I will do a friendly expansion of this consideration, and we introduce the notion of metacognitive feelings related to reasoning. So let's move into the slide. Um, what we try to defend here is the following hypothesis. We say the metacognitive feelings are mental affordances that do not depend of this external world, and is not necessarily motivated by external stimuli. So our argument is introducing a metacognition framework that is based in Proust and also Nelson and Naren models, Coriat, and because we try to understand how individuals perform some mental action, such as reasoning. So first of all, let's take a look into the metacognition literature. I'm just put in a very general way uh, a definition or conceptualization of metacognition. So what I say in my glossario in the beginning is that metacognition is just the ability to thinking about our own thinking. And this model has a previous model based in Nelson and Narrels that according to which our cognition can divide into two levels. First level is the level of first level of representation that we can put here belief, desire that represents something in the world. But according to the Nelson model, there is a meta level that monitoring this belief, this desire, and this is the level of the metacognition. But when we are monitoring, for example, our belief, there is a specific output of this monitoring and controlling action. And according to Koryat, monitoring drives control and feedback from control operation then produce monitoring output. This is a metacognitive feeling, which in turn drive into control and so on, so on. This conception understand a kind of feedback between first level into metacognitive level that carry information about what we are doing uh, cognitive in a cognitive way. So this conception about metacognitive feelings are important in the way of how can we understand the metacognition in non-human animals. So there is a bunch of experimental literature that focusing in the monitoring capacity of monos rhesus. In this case, this little monkey have to discriminate some visual patterns, and the idea is um, how can we explain when the monkeys don't want to doesn't want to perform a specific task. And Smith and others put in these discriminatory activities a button that is I don't know button, and the monkeys can push and don't do this experimental exercise. So the idea, the explanation here is how explain DAO in this test. And the more accurate question that many psychologists have is what are the basis for metacognitive subject? It is possible that the monkey have a monetary ability for learning, remembering, in-depth cognitive performance. And this is a debate that Peter Carothers and Joel Proust had from the last years. And this is a kind of antagony framework. So Peter Carothers considered that to perform metacognition, the individual requires a conceptual representation of their own representational states. It means that to monitoring my belief, I need a belief that judge my first level belief. And what Joel Proust said is that maybe metacognition doesn't need a belief because according to her, metacognition is just based on metacognitive feelings that are essentially non-conceptual evaluation of our own mental states. So maybe the hard question here is if the metacognition is involved meta representation. I think that is a hard question, but this is not my focus here because my focus is try to explain the affordances. So I think that what we could understand from this Joel Proust framework is the idea of the metacognitive feelings. So also, I'm not doing here ontology of metacognitive feelings, just pointing out some relevant characteristic of these feelings. So, as I say before, metacognitive feelings has been understood as output of the monetary system that are feel in a determinate way. This is uh, uh, this is the conception of Santiago Arango and Dawkins and others. This way to feel our own cognition has certain values that can be positive or negative. It's mean that when I have a feeling of knowledge or feeling of knowing, I have a positive, but when I forget something, I have a negative effect. Also, I can also feel in my body that I'm forgetting something and I feel a little bit like uncomfortable with this situation. And also, these metacognitive feelings have intensity. I can feel the forgetting as a strong feeling. And for example, stop my presentation because I feeling that I forget everything that I have prepared. But also, I can feel in a weak way. It's mean that just to feel okay, maybe I forget something, but I will continue anyway. And other main characteristic in for me here is the affordistic structure of the metacognitive feelings is the potential characteristic of these metacognitive feelings. According to Sousa, for example, they are not only shape our belief on decision, they also trigger our cognition and also guide our cognition. So I will explore this affordistic structure and let's think about the metacognitive feelings. So, for example, the feeling of doubt for exploratory behavior. Uh, when I'm read some paper and I found some notion, I have a doubt about the definition, and I just move into the library and try to find some books that can resolve this doubt. And as I say before, I can feel extremely um, strong as, for example, stop my activities of all day. Also, there is some cases of eureka. Eureka also can be considered as metacognitive feelings because just appear and you feel a strong sensation and you stop uh, whatever you do in that moment because you feel in a very expressive way. And in that sense, metacognitive feelings play a causal role that influence our behavior, as Coriat say in the some previous paper. So let's move into the three metacognitive stages. And this is an idea of Santiago Arango and also Joan Proust holding it. The idea is that our the metacognition can divide into three stages: self-proving, intermediate assessment, and post-evaluation. Self-proving is based in our epistemic history. For example, when I try to remember, I know and I feel that I'm a good remembering in or maybe I'm a kind of a amnesic guy that cannot remember nothing. So this self-proving predicted the potential of future cognitive process of the remembering process. So, for example, if I push myself to remembering, when in the unfolding or remembering process, I can control what's happening in my remembering. I can feel, for example, that certain loyalty or accuracy in my remembering, and maybe I can feel that I'm forgetting something and adjust online our cognitive strategy. And finally, when we stop to doing this mental activity, for example, remember, I can evaluate the outcome. Say, okay, maybe my last summer wasn't in Brazil, it was in Colombia, for example. And this is important to notice these three stages because in the next slide, then we apply to reasoning processes. So let's move a little bit faster. Um, Here is a completely different literature that is more linked with the nature of inferential processes. And understand the when we try to define what affordances might be, we usually find this notion that inference is a mental transition between uh, premises and conclusion. And maybe the most famous example is the rain inferential example of Bogosian, according to which if the street is wet and later I see that the street is wet because the raining, I can infer that maybe it rained the last day, the last night. So um, here, according to the Bogosian conception, this inferential process is coined in a modus ponens way, or maybe modus tollens. And I think that it's worked very well when we try to apply to understand practical inference. But the thing is, how can we understand inferential process in a mathematical abstract situation? So what we developed in our paper is a kind of phenomenological point of view of inference, according to which when we are doing an inference, we have metacognitive feelings that are attached not only to the conclusion, also is attached to the beginning of inferential process. It means when I start to do the all the inferential movement, also when I'm monitoring, and at the end, as many authors says, when we conclude, also there is a metacognitive feeling related to this process. This is the conception of, for example, Elia Chudnov. And metacognitive feelings are conscious experience that afford to act mentally in a particular way. In that sense, metacognitive feeling afford the inferential process. And the feeling of confidence afford to accept the conclusion to our inferential process. I want to sum in that consideration and explore a little bit further. So apply this metacognitive framework into the inferential processes. I can distinguish between these three scenarios. So before doing a inference, I can feel that maybe I'm not a good mathematician, but this is a really confession. I'm not a good person doing a mental calculus, and I know that I cannot do it when I go to a restaurant and we are like paying the bill. I'm terrible with this. So I have a feeling that maybe my the result of my mathematical process will be uncertainty, and that's prevent me maybe to performing the inference. But it's happened that the person what we are sharing this hypothetical scenario, that hypothetical dinner, that this this person is not a good in mental calculus as me. But in any case, I try to do a mental calculus, and maybe I can feel the feeling of reliability that monitor my performance, but also I can feel unreliability about my performance, and I can adjust my cognitive strategy and maybe like use my fingers to count, maybe use a piece of paper and try to like avoid this uncomfortable situation. And at the end, if I don't use these other strategies, just to focusing in my mental calculus, I can say, okay, I have to pay just 100 pesos, for example, that is a wrong answer. And maybe I can feel that my conclusion doesn't support my premises, and I feel uncertain that afford me to reject the conclusion. In a positive case, if I'm a good mental calculus person, I can feel rightness on endorsement that evaluate the result of my cognitive process, and uh, afford me to accept the conclusion for this calculus episode. And I think that in that sense, we can explain the aphrodisiac structure of the uh, metacognitive feelings. So let's move to the conclusion, and I will highlight what is important this point of view that I really already present. Concerning to the mental affordance hypothesis, we are agree with the foundational principle of mental affordances, and we propose a friendly extension or friendly expansion that we should consider metacognitive feelings are mental affordances because they explain mental action when there is no external stimuli. And just imagine the case of mathematical reasoning. And about mental agency, I think this framework sheds some light to understand the role of metacognitive feeling in reasoning, because we try to highlight the subjective experience that influence mental agency, and maybe we gain a richer concept of affordances in this representational point of view, because we are including the inner experience that maybe McLeland doesn't explore in a full-blown sense. And also we are shed some lines about the nature of metacognitive feelings, according to which they are not afford mental activities, but also influence how these activities unfold and adapt through the cognitive process. So I think that it's important to consider these metacognitive feelings, because the life will be absolutely boring if we don't consider that our mental activities has a more rich value that maybe is coined in that metacognitive feeling that we feel in some situations. And this is my presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. We now have time for questions and comments. Juan? Yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, hello,
Yeah,
Seba.
amazing.
Hola, Seba, ¿cómo estás? I will make my comment in English, but I have it written down. So, based on Motzelewski's work, Seba, the work is called Metacognitive Feelings. Oh, wait, the computer went off. she there considers metacognitive feelings as meta emotions. This meta level, you know, of sensitivity comes along with the evaluation of more general and long-term goals, you know, in an eudaimonistic way, you know, in an Aristotelic way. Modzelewski is thinking in a deliberative democracy, you know, based on Nussbaum's work, on Adela Cortina. They talk about meta emotions as well as John Elster, although Elster doesn't think the political dimension of the problem. My question concretely is, what do you think of this approach of the metacognitive feelings as involved in an ethical deliberation of the subjectivity? And is there a correlation between this ethical approach and of metacognitive feelings and that comprehends an ethical perspective of the problem? Is there a correlation between this approach and yours? That's my question. Those are my questions.
No, this is an amazing question. Thank you so much, Juan. And yeah, I think that until here, my I was saying that until here, my paper, our paper just focus in cognitive activities. I mean, just to understand reasoning, remembering, and paying attention. Something that I have to clarify is that our notion until here is just characterize what's happening in the mind. We are not okay. We are mind in bodies, but we are not thinking this framework into the world. I mean, because this literature is related for example, the conception of Martin Nussbaum conception about social feeling and etc. And I think that is a great framework. But until here, I think that I don't have a specific answer to maybe making a comparison into these social feelings and also these cognitive feelings. I think that is related, of course, because at the end of the day, it is feelings, you know. Also, we have the problem of how can we define feeling and emotion and sentiment. As for example, this is the recommendation of GC Prince, but I think that is not the topic here until now. The thing is how explain this gap between feelings related with cognitive process and social feelings. Maybe this is a final suggestion. We should read the paper of John Dorsch. That I think is a young guy that developed embodied notion of metacognition. I think that is great. But also when we read John Dorsch, he is just taking the feeling that is related to the body that receive external perception, proprioception and etc. But I think that is not clear how the social environment impact the metacognition. I think this is the link that it's not clear in the literature as far as I understand.
Okay. Tom, nice to see you here. He was the first one who accepted the invitation, and you were very encouraging, but he had some previous commitments, but thank you for being here.
I'm very happy to be here, and thanks very much for a really interesting talk. I think I agree with all of it, but I just had a clarificatory question about motivation. So do you think that metacognitive feelings are always motivational? So the reason this might be important for thinking about them as affordances is one view of affordances is sometimes we can perceive an affordance without being motivated at all to act on that affordance. So you might see something as edible without being at all attracted towards eating. Some people aren't going to agree with that view, but it's one option. So do you think that metacognitive feelings always have motivational power? Or can we make sense of a metacognitive feeling that tells us what we could do, but doesn't in any way tell us that we should do something or motivate us to do something?
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm a little bit nervous with your question because my paper is based on your paper. So it's a great opportunity to have a discussion with you. I think that what we have in mind about this motivation role is that maybe it's not always present. I mean, because we are not always in a metacognitive position, a metacognitive posture. Also, for example, with the T-top-down phenomenon, we have this sensation that we are forgetting something, but we are not we are not aware of the sensation. It means we feel some somatic markers, but we cannot explain. Then we say, oh yeah, maybe I'm forgetting something. What I try to answer is that metacognitive feelings is not always we are not aware all the time of these feelings. It just happens when we have this kind of awareness of what we're doing with our cognitive process. I'm not sure if I answered you.
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah. So when we are aware of our metacognitive feelings, do those feelings then always motivate us to act? Right. So that's a live option. So it could be that for ordinary bodily affordances, you sometimes see some affordances that aren't very important and they don't have any motivational power, where there's something about metacognition that means you're only going to have a metacognitive feeling if it tells you to do something, right? So you're never aware of a kind of neutral metacognitive feeling.
Mhm.
So is that what you're saying? We don't experience neutral metacognitive feelings. The feelings always have at least some motivational power.
No, and also have a balance. I mean, maybe you can feel like strong feeling or maybe a weak feeling. And I have to say thanks for your question because I just put in the table some like crazy ideas, but um, also we try to develop these metacognitive feelings in terms of action selection. Mm, this is the debate of how we select these mental affordances. And I think that also metacognitive feelings are available to understand in this framework of menu of mental action, because I think this is the crazy idea. I think that we have many, in some situation, we have many feelings related with our cognitive process, and this feeling is contrary. I mean, we feel, for example, that I'm doing a great talk, but at the end of the day, I feel that maybe I'm doing a bad thing. So this feeling battle to be like awareness, but this is a crazy idea that we have developed further. But I think that we have to maybe explain better the notion of motivation. What is the motivation role of metacognitive feelings?
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Aaron Glazer.
Hey, hey Sebastian. Thank you so much for this talk. I also have a slightly clarificatory question. Maybe because I'm not so familiar with the representational view of affordances, but when I understand Gibson, I think that a lot of times we think of the source of the affordance being something in the world, like an object, a tree, thing of marbles or whatever. I'm trying to. It seems like you're suggesting that the metacognitive feelings are the maybe source of the affordance in this case. Um, but it doesn't seem like this is a. I guess I'm wondering where those are grounded. It's easy to say that they're grounded in the world with the tree to climb case, the affordance to climb a tree. But I guess where do these mental affordances? I guess what's providing them to the agent?
But let me try if I understand. Are you asking for from which framework? Gibson,
I guess
McClellan, or
I'm trying to
representational?
understand how the metacognitive feelings are going to sort of provide the affordance, and is this going to lead us to some sort of claim that there is some sort of continuity between mind and world? Because that's, I think, the driving force of Gibson, I guess, unless you want to just get rid of those commitments.
No, I think that it's important to distinguish between the frameworks because it's a little bit antagonic or contrary. I'm not sure if an activist mm, philosopher accept this view of that we can perceive affordances because it's remind us to the idea of mental representation, that this is precise what uh, from ecological point of view try to not reject, let's say reject a little bit, reject. And the idea of metacognitive feelings is that we have this output that we feel about our cognitive activity. This feeling is related with the body in general. There is a taxonomy according to which, but this is not developed here, that our heart rate inform, for example, that I'm a little bit nervous, and this feeling of my heart bumping inform that maybe I'm not a master in this topic. What I try to say is that the feelings, the metacognitive feelings, is related to the body, inform about bodily change. Is not relate what's happened outside the body. Yeah, body is situated, but I think that the focus here is the directionality, because from metacognitive point of view is a direction from top down top down direction, not contrary, I think, from maybe ecological point of view, from bottom up direction. It's mean from from environment into our cognition. Uh, the direction is mind uh, into the world or something like that. But here the focus is just in this idea of inner environment. I answer, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, right.
Okay, Miguel?
Hi, Sebastian. Thank you so much for your talk. It was very interesting, and I have to say I kind of agree with your overall point. My question would be more like, I'm not 100% sure how your argument helps the mental affordance hypothesis, in the sense that, okay, you can say, well, it's not external information, is your awareness of your metacognitive states or your metacognitive feelings that leads you to some mental acts, like imagination, counting, the mental actions that Tom mentioned in his paper. But then my question would be like, well, you can say that. You can say that before I am, so because I am aware of some metacognitive feelings, there I am more motivated to perform such or such action. But it's not the same as saying that I perceive my metacognitive feeling as affording such and such. So what I mean is that even introducing metacognitive feelings there doesn't really solve the problem of how mental affordances are supposed to be experienced or perceived or sensed. But so I don't see. So the thing is that your story can be completely right, 100% true, and it doesn't really connect to the mental hypothesis, to the mental hypothesis yet. You know what? I don't know if I was clear.
Wow. Yeah, no, this is amazing. So if I understand you well, your whole point is that maybe metacognitive feelings doesn't support mental affordance hypothesis because we have to explain this causal role. Yeah, I think and this is the hard problem, I think. What we try to do is develop this idea of the phenomenology of metacognitive feelings. As I say before, we perceive our mental state in a particular way when we are thinking, when we are desire, and it's not just about sensation, because this sensation move to perform this determinate. I think this is the link, because when you feel, for example, that you have a doubt, you're not like in your sofa and waiting, maybe waiting for the answer, but you like move into the action, you afford, this is our thesis also, and you afford to maybe be more reflective. And I think that this is the motivational role. And also, maybe it's not satisfactory to you, because also I think that we need to develop a little bit with a certain accuracy, but we think that this sensation, the strong sensation that we feel, move to action, um, both in a cognitive way, also in a bodily way. And
Yeah, but the
for
fact that
us, this is yeah.
no,
Go
no.
ahead.
What I was saying is that the fact that it moves to action doesn't really prove anything, because as Tom said, I mean, it's possible that you sometimes perceive affordances and you are not moved by them, and the other way is also possible, right? So the fact that you are moved by something doesn't necessarily mean that you perceive that as an affordance. So you can be moved by action. So because you can say, so the point here is not just to show that there is a causal link, that being aware of your metacognitive feelings motivates you to act in certain ways. The question is clarify this causal link, is showing that it is the perception of those metacognitive feelings as affordances that motivate that and affording this. Because again, I can perceive the environment in multiple different ways, in action neutral metrics, etc. But that what the empirical evidence tell us is that actually we perceive the environment in terms of bodily affordances. And in my talk on Friday, I will show some examples. So it's not just a causal role, it's a causal role that's very specific and is linked with the idea that is perceived or experienced as an affordance for something. So not being moved, but the next thing that you're saying. Just being moved by this, I don't think is enough to prove the point of the mental affordance hypothesis in this way.
Yeah. It's amazing. Wow, it's good. Maybe let me try this answer. I think that the person who explore a little bit with certain accuracy is Joel Proust. Maybe she will explain Friday or tomorrow. I don't remember, because she will explain how it's possible to perceive these mental affordances. According to her model, this is a paper of the last year, sorry. She thinks that the metacognitive feelings tells the subject what affordances takes. It's mean that she have a informational point of view of metacognitive feelings, and we are based in her work, but we try to make a little of distance, because for us it's not necessary to to create this kind of individualism conception that the subject understand the metacognitive feeling that inform. What we believe is that the same metacognitive feeling have a affordistic, this is a new terminology that we introduce, a affordistic structure that motivate to action. I'm not convincing you until now, but yeah, this is what I have to say until now. Maybe I have to explore more this motivational part, but this is good. That is good. I really appreciate your question.
No, I mean, I was just trying to anticipate like this kind when you submit the paper, kind of a reviewer two question. Like, okay, got you. Can you really tell me the difference between? But no, thank you so much.
No, thank you to you.
Okay. I have one question. I agree with Miguel and Manuel's idea that in order to use meaningfully the notion of affordance, you have to specify what is the information and how that information is used. Joel Proust speaks of expressive. I don't know if she uses the word information. I think she does. And says that feelings have an content. I think is the word she uses. That feelings have an expressive content. Would you agree with that framework? And what is your understanding of that expressive content? Because you spoke earlier of bodily information, but then you said, well, of course, that is an embodied, situated thing. It's not just like proprioceptive information. It's more rich. So what is your view about the information that is being experienced by metacognitive field?
Okay, so from bottom. No, thank you so much for the question. Yeah, I try to avoid this debate because for me it's absolutely difficult. It's related with what metacognitive feeling represent. And this is the debate that Proust have with Peter Carruthers. So Proust say that the content of the metacognitive feeling is expressive content. In other way to say is just metacognitive feeling are non-conceptual evaluation and etc. Contrary to Peter Carruthers' position that say that for perform metacognition you have to you should have concept in a hard way to understand concept, in a linguistic way and etc. So I try to avoid this the idea of content because that debate is so difficult. That is related with the meta representation and etc. And also I know that Peter Carruthers modify a little bit his position in the last paper. The paper related with the curiosity. And I'm not studied too much the new version of Peter Carruthers, but I know that he's a little bit he's less intellectualistic than before. And yeah, Santiago and I commit with the mostly conception on Joel Proust. It's not free that Joel Proust is the teacher of Santiago, so we have just a little difference. The difference is what I pointed out before in Miguel question. Maybe it's the difference between informational understanding of metacognitive feeling that Joel Proust will hold in this workshop. And for us, it's the same thing. Metacognitive are affordances. But I know we have to develop a little bit late.
Thank you very much. By the way, she told me that she has a bad cold, so she had to go earlier today, but she said to give you apologies.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
Nicolas?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me, Seba?
Yeah,
We-
Nico.
Okay, I really liked your presentation. To make a reflection on it, I'm not going to ask you anything. I made a connection between that you said and Habermas' theory of communicative action. You know, Habermas argued that a hearer understands another speaker when he produces an illocutionary effect. H claim P against S, and if S catches the act, taking P as an assertion and not as a question, a plea, a promise, both have already entered into a small dialogical relation. But Habermas states, when a speaker produces a perlocutionary effect on his hearer, he is producing a causal influence, and that cannot be taken as reciprocal understanding because it is an asymmetrical relation. However, you talked about feelings of uncertainty, feeling confident, feeling right as opportunities, for instance, affordance to talk with other. So I think that the effects on emotions, actions, and thoughts that we produces on others, perlocutionary effects, when we do things with words, are part of a process of understanding. They are not its
Hello?
That's all.
Oh, it's please a little bit. Sorry, can you repeat the last part? Because I missed the last part.
The last part? Yeah.
Yeah, just the last.
Yeah, so I think that the effects on emotions, actions, and thoughts, perlocutionary effects that we produce on others when we do things with words, are a part of a process of understanding, and they are not its counterpart.
Yeah, Nico,
But
thanks for your comment. Maybe it's not completely
it's
direct.
only a comment.
Yeah, a comment. Yeah. But I think
Complex,
there is
but
a great opportunity to explore some crazy ideas, maybe. And also, I don't know if you remember, Aaron, the discussion about the possibility of extended metacognition. Okay, I will put again here. The idea is what's happened in mind-splaining situation. You know, this idea of, for example, when the men take the word and trying to explain to the girls about certain topic. I think that is a good example of how the conception or the ideas of the ideas of the other person can interrupt into your metacognitive skills. I mean, for example, just put in a imaginary, but this is not imaginary, that's a real situation that you have a girlfriend and you say, no, sorry, you are not a good person, you're not a good remembering person, or you cannot remember nothing. Just imagine this judge that there is a auto, I don't know how to say in English, but there's you take this narrative and maybe this narrative affect the way that you perceive your own cognition. What I try to say is that this is a sorry, I don't use, I'm not use the Habermas concept, but this is a perlocutionary act. For me, has certain impact in the way that you conceive your own cognition. Again, with the case of man explaining situation, if a person all the time say you're not good remembering, you're the worst, you're the worst person remembering, you cannot, your mind is not accurate. I think this narrative really influence the way that you conceive as remembering person. But sorry if I just put other topics, but I think there is maybe there's a link between these perlocutionary acts and mental um, um, epistemic or metacognitive feelings. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Jillian?
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. That was super interesting, and I think it's really important to have these conversations about kind of more or less intellectualistic approaches to metacognition and metacognitive feelings, and kind of like exploring these kind of interactions between kind of more representational and a more embodied approaches to affordance perception and mental affordances. And so I was wondering kind of like in hearing you talk, kind of like, so how much metacognition is already there, metacognitive feelings is already there in a kind of ordinary kind of like a kind of embodied kind of case of affordance perception, right? So people in this literature sometimes kind of borrow from Merleau-Ponty this notion of the tendency towards an optimal grip. And in a sense, I think, in a very basic sense, this feeling of optimal grip, feeling how well are you doing in a particular kind of situation, has some of the characteristics of a metacognitive feeling. It is a feeling, and that feeling tells you how well you're doing kind of in your interaction with the environment. And I think you wouldn't say kind of like that feeling itself is the affordance, but kind of that feeling kind of colors the affordances such that some things kind of like stand out as relevant. Because if I feel stuck in my current kind of thing, then something else kind of like switching task might stand out more than if I have a feeling of grip and things are really going well. So that suggests two things, I think. So one, something like a basic notion of metacognitive feeling, and probably in a kind of procedural way that Proust means, and not so much in the kind of meta kind of cognitive way or the meta representational way of Carruthers, but something of that kind of procedural form of metacognition is part and parcel of any kind of skilled affordance responsiveness. But that metacognitive feeling itself is not sufficient for kind of, it's not itself the affordance, but it kind of colors the affordances. So I would think that in the mental case, something similar might hold, saying that, well, yeah, sure, these metacognitive feelings kind of, they do guide our kind of mental mental transactions and mental thoughts, and so, but still you need to have something else, namely these mental affordances that and the coloring of that mental affordances, that is what these metacognitive feelings are doing. So I thought, like, yeah, does this make sense, and can you reflect a bit on this kind of
Yeah, sure.
case and the mental case?
Yeah. I'm so happy that you say that question, because I think that this is the first step of my research investigation, because I have a representational tradition. Um, I'm a philosopher of mind, a kind of philosopher of mind, and for me, I'm think in belief in a representational way that have a conceptual content and etc. And my idea maybe is to move into the enactivist and ecological psychology. This is my direction. But until now, I'm just trying to develop maybe a framework from a top-down direction. What I mean is, now my notion is mental representation, metacognitive feelings, but I'm absolutely, I know that, I'm absolutely secure that we are not like kind of Cartesian mind, you know, that this is this is the body, this is the our mind. I did that is integrated, but until now I cannot explain, because for me the enactivist of this ecological framework is absolutely useful to understand how the body is situated in the environment. And also I really want to maybe introduce the ideas, the Malafuri's framework into this conception, because also what I have in mind is that the metacognition is affected by cognitive artifacts. What I try to say is that for me, there is a clear connection between this representational framework and this ecological view. But the thing is, how we can do it? For me, this is a hard question. It's a hard question because, okay, if I take this an activist point of view, how can I explain this meta level, this meta representation? And I take this notion of Malafuri's because Malafuri explained memory very well through the photographies and etc. But when I discussed with a student of Malafuri's, I asked about, okay, what about meta memories? I say, oh, meta what? No, sorry, I cannot answer. This is the thing that I cannot just forget. The idea that we can monitor in our mental life, that this is not the thing that the enactivist point of view explain. And contrary, this is the thing that this representational view or cognitivist point of view explain very well, but also there is a limitation. How can we explain this metacognitive mind in social frameworks? So there is other limitation there. So maybe this is an invitation to think together, integrative notion of um, this metacognitive mind in an activist framework, or maybe I'm so naive. Maybe ecological framework really explain metacognition, and I don't know. If you have a paper, please just send me, because I don't know nothing about this literature.
Maybe just a small point if possible, right? So I think many activists kind of operate with some kind of notion of anticipation. And of course, anticipations can be frustrated also, right? And kind of that can be a source of a kind of metacognition that might be close to what Proust calls kind of procedural metacognition. So it wouldn't be a kind of monitoring kind, but a kind of in-action kind of sense of how well you're doing, how well your anticipations are being fulfilled or not. So that might be I haven't explored this. I'm not sure if other people have, but that might be a way to get some hybrid kind of.
But do you have some names of people to hold
Okay.
this?
I think Sean has a lot of work on anticipation. I and kind of prediction and anticipation. I did a bit of
Anticipation.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I will look. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
I would like to add a small thing related to Jayla's comment, is that Proust says cognitive control is a counterpart of motor control, and she uses the same comparator structure that is used for motor control. So maybe we can ask her later on Friday, but we have these great similarities between the two things. I suppose I'm not sure. I should check what she says and what Santiago and Sebastian say. You can clarify now, Sebastian. But I think maybe motor control is the phylogenetical antecedent of these types of structures, and these structures evolved to profit or piggyback on this type of monitor structure. I don't know what would you say, Sebastian?
So sorry.
Okay.
About monetary control?
Yeah, I was saying that motor control has the same comparator structure, right? And so maybe cognitive control is an evolutionary addition to these types of structure, or maybe uses these motor control structures in an embodied way to perform cognitive control.
But okay, when you say that is evolutionary, until what part is evolutionary? I mean, because you know that many the book of Beran and others and try to find metacognition in monkeys, dolphins, and also crazy people that are thinking metacognition in plants.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't know what is the limit. I think that a great advance in Proust's theory is that it is not necessary to have linguistic capacities. And this is a good idea because we can understand this monetary system in monkeys' decision. And for example, the some person, I'm thinking in philosophy of decision that say that we take decision in a spontaneous way, automatic, but something that is clear is that we as human have uh, this conceptual background to clarify what we are thinking, and this is a capacity just linked with our develop of linguistic capacities. What I try to say is that monkeys and human has the same metacognition, but we can how can I say that? Refinar our metacognitive skills with a cool tool and etc.
Okay. Yeah. What I was thinking is you have even more elemental forms of control than you have in rhesus monkeys. I'm thinking the type of body control done by the cerebellum, for example. So this is a new question. I'm not clarifying, but would it make
Yeah,
sense?
sorry, my bad.
No, sorry. Would it make sense to say that you cannot draw a sharp line between motor control and cognitive control? That maybe there are different time scales, or there are different degrees in which top-down processing takes place, but there is not a sharp boundary when you can say, oh, this is not merely motor control. This is where cognitive control begins. Would you agree that there is no point in drawing that line, or would you be interested in drawing that line and say, no, this is a different phenomenon, this is cognitive control?
Well, sorry, my bad if I don't understand very well your question, because it's hard. It's a little bit tricky because you know that the literature about metacognition is a huge literature that people take study cases from memory, meta memory, perceptual discrimination, and there is like psychological, neurological, sorry, study cases. So it completes into one conception that Proust take. As far as I understand Proust's conception, she tried to not apply this completely body control system into metacognition, because she is based on Nelson and Arnold model, that is a model of meta memory. And I think that this control body literature is more linked with the motor control that is maybe more linked with Pachery and others reflection. I know if you know about this literature about physiological action, bodily action, but I think that the focus here is mental control, something like that. That this is the point that proofs have been developed through the years. I'm not saying that it's different. I'm just saying that the common background maybe is different.
Okay, so
Um,
maybe it's not different in type necessarily.
yeah, maybe, maybe, but I'm not sure until now, because I think that Proust just focusing the what's happening with the mind, not with the bodily movement. Remember the text of mental agency. There is not explicit explanation of what's happened with the body later. Later, with you can be aware of the metacognitive feelings. It's just what's happened with the mind, because the focus of Bruce is mental action.
Thank you very
I
much.
hope to don't say something very naive.
Oh, yeah, yes. No,
Or
thank you
very
very
contrary to Proust's conception. Yeah.
Thank you. Carlos, and then we finish with Carla, if she still wants to participate.
Okay, thanks for your talk, Joan. Well, I would like to put a bit of pressure regarding your commitments with ecological psychology, for example. Yeah. And if I understood well your point, your thesis is that metacognitive feelings are opportunities for mental actions. For example, the feeling of forgetting, yeah, affords a certain set of mental actions. For example, like trying to remembering again or whatever. Yeah. In this sense, a metacognitive feeling affords certain mental actions, and we can use as synonymous of affords, for example, compels or prompts or
Trigger.
triggers or whatever, something like that. Yeah. And there are probably within our mental architecture so many states that afford, compels, triggers, prompts that are not affordances. So I would like to know, for example, what within your approach, your framework, is additionally involved in an affordance more than just being specified as an opportunity for action. I mean, because as far as I know, defining affordance as opportunity as an opportunity for action is super vague way of defining affordance. I mean, that's there's no troubles with that. No, you can use it instrumentally and just say, I don't have any commitment with the ecological, a strong commitment with the ecological framework, and I can use compel, prompt, trigger just interchangeably. But could you please tell us a bit more about that commitments with the ecological notion of affordance or your notion of affordance?
Yeah. Wow. This is a great. This is the final shot. I mean, yeah, it's a good question, Carlos. Thank you so much. And I think that is great. This question, because when I present this talk in others symposium related with this topic, people say, okay, I can just change the word afford and put trigger, and it's work in the same way. In that reason, what is the necessity to introduce this conception of metacognitive feeling as mental affordances? And I think that maybe it's good to be a little bit skeptical, and this is good. But also, I think that what we gain to consider metacognitive feeling as affordances is that we can explain a little bit with a little bit details mental agency. Maybe a clarification there. My theoretical commitments is not with the ecological, contrary is with the representational view. I mean, because this way to understand metacognitive, it doesn't have sense in the ecological point of view. It's just here in this one. So I think that we gain a rich concept of mental agency, because we, as I say before, we are taking an open avenue that McClellan put in his paper, in 2020 paper, that he say how it's possible to consider mental affordances that is not absolutely linked with the world, with the environment. So we explore a notion of mental environment, that this is a slide that I not show, but I will show right now because the slide is so beautiful. But here, what we have, our background is the idea of the cognitive horizon, that is the Yorba conception, that our mental environment, we have many opportunity to perform action. And as, for example, Metzinger put it, this inner environment give us the opportunity to perform determinate mental action. In that sense, what we try to explain is how metacognitive action afford this particular mental action. So I think that we are just trying to expand the McClellan notion and consider this metacognitive feeling, and also maybe have a richer notion of agency. Consider not only bodily agency, also consider, for example, mental agency, that you know that is a huge topic. Who and others try to clarify the if, for example, remembering is a mental action. Also, Santiago Arango has a paper try to understand mind wandering, that is la mente divagante as mental affordances, sorry, as a mental action. So at the end, I think we have a richer notion of mental agency.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, probably through this, it's a very interesting alternative, trying to internalize the environment in order to capture this ecological import somehow within the cognitive economy or mental economy. Yeah, and this is very, very interesting. However, probably when you talk about metacognitive feelings as compelling or affording some mental actions, probably I'm wrong, but it seems that you are talking more about something that um, some people call solicitations, kind of the phenomenological profiles of affordances. I mean, because when we talk about solicitations, we talk, for example, about what Siegel called, and I think that this is a good concept, experience mandates. Yeah. For example, if you have the metacognitive feeling of forgetting the phone number of your mother, you experience a mandate to recall it if you need to call your mother urgently. Yeah. But when we experience of being compelled to mentally act in some way within that internal environment, probably the what we are dealing with are not affordances, are mutual specifications that involve the environment in which life, physical life is working, but we are dealing within an inner space of solicitations. And that's my point about, for example, trying to specify your concept of affordance within that inner environment, or probably changing, making that shift to the notion of solicitation. I don't know, but probably it helps your framework somehow. Don't know if I'm just confusing some things.
No, I think that is great because yeah, something that we absolutely forget to put in our framework is this distinction between solicitation, opportunities, and yeah, I think you're right. Maybe if we have, but I'm not sure if it's. I don't know how to put it in our paper. I mean, because I think that is other discussion, because this is linked with the discussion of so many of mental action that I try to maybe explain to McLennan a little bit. So I will take note about this suggestion and maybe discuss with Santiago if it's work, the distinction between solicitation, opportunity, because you're absolutely right. We are just describe the phenomenological part. Then I think there is linked with the Jorba try to do, or Jorba do it. But thank you so much for your suggestion, Carlos. Amazing.
Thanks, John.
Carla, would you like to add something?
Yes, thank you. It's a brief commentary. It's based on this commentary from Alejandro related with motor control. I was thinking that in motor imagery, we work with this part of planning or see this dynamic imagine in the brain, on the mind. And how can you move or improve this move? And I was asking if this is to an opportunity to work with this metacognitive feeling in this opportunity to see different context, see different reactions of my actions, and how can I improve that with my related with the motor control. How can that help me to feeling more secure to do something?
Well, thank you so much for your question. It's absolutely interesting. And yeah, I think about motor control, and this literature is more linked with this new, I don't know if this is new, but it's the philosophy of sport. People that try to understand how simulation improve this motor skill. And when I was a heavyweight lifter, when I was in the university, the exercise is okay, just sit down and try to think the specific bodily movement to carry on the weight. And the exercise is to put in a mental simulation in terms of nanai, to create in your mind the idea of your body movement. And according to some authors that are agree with this notion of motor control, say that this simulation, mental simulation, really improve your physical movement. But the interesting question is if it's the same in the mental sphere. For example, when I try to remember all these conference in my mind, and I don't know if it will be helpful or if I can improve my my talk, because right now I'm not secure because I try in my mind to imagine the question that the people will ask me. But what I try to say is that this literature that you have pointed out is more linked with the physical capacities, not with the mental capacities. Maybe could be linked with the this a notion that Santiago Amaya worked a few years ago about in intentional mental planning or intentional in planning. And this is the notion of do have a simulation in our minds about the possible scenarios, but I'm not secure about if it's improve our mental skills. I answered bit. I answer your question, just like would be far away of.
No, thank you. It's a good notice to hear about someone to do this part of the job, but it was more related with if they work with imaginary, it's an opportunity to improve this metacognitive feelings in people who have some problem with their emotions, or people that have some kind of disease that affect their emotions, and they need to plan how to improve or be more aware of them.
So you mean that if I put myself in a imaginary situation that I discuss with my girlfriend and I try to make some answer, you say that maybe I can improve my emotional intelligence or something like that?
Well, I didn't think in that example, but I was thinking more in people that can do some activity. I don't know if that have some problem in the walking and they generate some kind of frustration, but they don't know why or how that frustration generate another feelings. So when there are in rehab and we work with imaginary motor, we can relate these metacognitive feelings to be aware of that emotion and how to I don't know, work in another emotion that is better for the patient.
Yeah, for that reason, I try to distinguish between motor imagery and mental simulation in deportive field, and the other scenario that is in, let's say, cognitive scenario, because it's different, because the case that you put is in how mental simulation can be helpful for motor disease. But here I'm just focused in the scenario that we metacognitive feeling afford some mental action. What I try to stress is just that is those two scenario, bodily scenario and mental scenario. Sorry, I'm not dualist. It's just to have the things clear here. I think mental imagery can improve in two scenarios. But the focus here is just in the cognitive scenario. Maybe I have to explore about how the motor scenario can influence the way that we perceive ourselves as thinkers, but I don't know. But let's say that this different scenario, Carla.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, Sebastian.
Thank you.
We will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. Mexico City time to listen to Marta Yorba's presentation. Thanks, everybody. Bye.